The discovery. The hum of the Nautilus was a constant presence, a reassuring sound that filled the ship's metallic corridors as it glided through the void of space. The sleek research vessel, one of Earth's most advanced spacecraft, had been exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy for years. Its mission, to uncover the mysteries of ancient alien artifacts, technologies, and civilizations. But today, something had changed. The crew of the Nautilus was about to stumble upon a discovery that would alter the course of human history forever. Dr. Eve Carter stood in the control room, her eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of her. It flickered in blue light, showing an anomalous object far off in the distance, something that didn't belong. The object was not like anything they'd encountered before. A massive, dormant ship, drifting silently in deep space. It had no known origin, no identification signals, and its design was entirely foreign to human understanding. "Captain, we've got something," Eve said, her voice calm but edged with excitement. She didn't need to say more. Captain Jason Harrington was already at her side, his eyes narrowing as he studied the strange object on the screen. "Can you confirm its origin?" Harrington asked, his tone businesslike. Eve shook her head. "No signs of any markings. It's not on any charts. But the readings, it's not just any derelict. There's something off about it, like it's deliberately hidden." "Prepare for a boarding mission," Harrington ordered. "If it's a derelict, we can salvage what we can. If it's something else, we'll handle it." The crew moved quickly, their movement precise and practiced as they suited up in the ship's airlock, preparing to make their way to the ancient vessel. It took only a few minutes to arrive at the wreckage. As the boarding party floated out of the Nautilus and onto the outer hull of the derelict ship, Eve's stomach churned. The silence around them was unnerving, even with the rhythmic hum of their breathing equipment. The outer hull was smooth and dark, almost liquid in its texture, a material unlike anything Earth scientists had ever catalogued. The ship's surface was covered with strange, glowing symbols, but none of them were recognizable. This was not a ship from any civilization they had encountered. Inside, the ship was as alien as its exterior. The corridors were vast and open, but the design felt incomprehensible, almost unnatural. Walls curved in ways that defied human understanding. The architecture didn't make sense. There were no corners, no right angles, just sweeping, smooth lines that seemed to stretch infinitely, as if the ship's structure had been built with a completely different set of physical laws in mind. The crew moved cautiously, navigating their way through the empty halls. They passed rooms that appeared to be laboratories, with strange equipment and untouched consoles that hummed with dormant energy. No signs of life, no signs of struggle. It was as if the ship had been abandoned peacefully, yet there was something ominous about it. It was too quiet. "We've reached the data core," Eve said, her voice barely a whisper over the comms. She was standing before a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed with a faint light. At its center was a console, but it wasn't like any data terminal she'd ever seen. It was organic, almost living in its design, with tendrils of energy swirling around its surface. She reached out, her gloved fingers hesitating just above the console. There was a palpable weight in the air, like something was watching them, waiting for them to make the wrong move. Eve's instinct screamed at her to stop. But curiosity, the driving force behind her entire career, pushed her forward. She activated the console, her heart racing as the crystal core began to hum louder, its energy increasing. The screen flickered to life, revealing holographic projections of alien writing, vast and incomprehensible. Alongside the writing, there was a message encoded in a language she could not recognize. "We need to decode this," Eve said to the team. She quickly began interfacing with the terminal, connecting her wrist pad to the ancient technology. The holograms blinked and shifted, almost as if they were reacting to her touch. As the translation algorithm started working, the messages began to make sense. The first message appeared in her native language, though it felt distant, like an echo of something much older. "Never waken them." Eve's fingers froze on the interface. The message was short, cryptic, but its implications were immediate and chilling. Who were they? And why were these alien civilizations warning against waking them? Before she could process it fully, the holograms continued to shift, revealing more messages from various alien species. Each one had the same warning. Each one made it clear, never awaken them. Eve's heart began to pound. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. Harrington and the others gathered around the terminal, their faces growing pale as they read the messages. It wasn't just one warning. It was dozens, all from different civilizations that had once encountered Earth, or at least its ancient past. The more they uncovered, the more the warnings seemed to become a chorus. "Do not wake what sleeps beneath." "What does it mean?" one of the researchers asked, breaking the silence. Eve didn't have an answer, but the message was clear. They had found something ancient, something powerful, and whatever it was, the universe had conspired to keep it dormant. And now, they had just unknowingly triggered its awakening. The awakening. The return to Earth was supposed to be a moment of triumph. The Nautilus and its crew had completed their mission, and the discovery of the ancient ship would mark a milestone in humanity's exploration of the stars. But as the ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, something felt off. The air was thick with tension. Dr. Eve Carter, who had been the driving force behind the discovery, could not shake the feeling that they were not only returning with treasure, but with a ticking time bomb. The ship landed at the Lunar Research Station, a massive complex built to study extraterrestrial findings and experiments. It was a sleek, sterile facility designed to house the most dangerous and delicate of human discoveries. Eve stepped off the Nautilus alongside Captain Harrington, her mind racing with thoughts of the cryptic messages she had uncovered. The warnings were still fresh in her mind. Never awaken them. The warnings of an ancient entity, a force too powerful for any civilization to contain. As the crew disembarked, they were greeted by a group of scientists and government officials who were eager to learn more about the alien technology they had retrieved. But Eve's heart wasn't in the accolades or the briefings. It was consumed by the eerie certainty that something was already beginning to stir, something far beyond their understanding. "We'll begin analyzing the data logs immediately," Eve told the group, her voice unwavering despite the storm brewing inside her. "There's more to this ship than we thought. We need to proceed carefully." As the team settled into the high-tech laboratory, a wave of energy from the alien vessel began to pulse through the systems. At first, it was barely noticeable, a low hum that seemed to echo in the back of Eve's mind. Then it grew louder, vibrating through the walls, the air itself. She felt it in her chest, like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. "This isn't normal," Eve muttered to herself, eyes narrowing as she watched the readings. "The power core is unstable." "Dr. Carter, are you sure this is safe?" Captain Harrington asked, his face tight with concern. "If this ship is as ancient as you say, it could be dangerous. We don't know what we're dealing with." Eve nodded, but her unease was growing. The data was clearer now, but it only deepened the mystery. The alien message wasn't just a warning. It was a record of something far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. The ship was a relic, yes, but its purpose was something else entirely. She had decoded part of the alien message that mentioned the prime entity, a being or force of unimaginable power buried deep within Earth. "We've been searching the wrong place," Eve said, almost to herself. "The answer isn't in space. It's here." The thought hit her like a cold wave. She had always believed that Earth was just another planet in the cosmos, a footnote in the universe's grand story. But these messages, they were telling her something different. Earth had once been home to something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The civilization that built the ship, the beings who had sent the warning, had they been the ones to contain it, or had they been the ones to try to stop it from breaking free? "We need to take this to the highest level," Eve said, meeting Harrington's gaze. "There's something under Earth, something dangerous." The captain's face hardened. "We'll take this to the government. But if what you're saying is true, we might be in over our heads." As the data continued to flood in, the strange occurrences began to escalate. At first, it was just a few power outages across the lunar station, nothing major. But soon, the disruptions grew. Electromagnetic pulses began interfering with equipment, and the security systems malfunctioned. There were even reports of crew members experiencing strange hallucinations, visions of a time long past, of buildings that were not on Earth, of beings that defied description. The warnings had been clear, but now Eve realized they hadn't truly understood the gravity of them. The entity was not just an abstract threat. It was tied to the very fabric of Earth itself. Somehow, it had been buried, hidden, dormant. And now, with the discovery of the alien ship, that slumber was being disturbed. "We have to find it," Eve insisted, pushing away from the console and heading toward the elevator. "We need to track down the location of the prime entity, and we need to do it now." As she entered the elevator, the hum of the station's malfunctioning power systems seemed to resonate through the walls. The sensation was unsettling, as if the very station they were in was beginning to collapse inward, pressing against their minds. But it wasn't the station. It wasn't just the power grid. It was something else. As Eve and the team prepared to descend to Earth's surface to begin their search, the warnings from the alien messages echoed in her mind. Each one was the same: never awaken them. The prime entity was still down there, somewhere, waiting. And it wasn't just a relic of the past. It was alive, aware, and slowly awakening. And humanity had just begun to stir it. The crew disembarked from the station, heading toward the unknown, driven by the same relentless curiosity that had propelled them to the stars. But the deeper they went, the more they realized that what they sought might not be a discovery, but a death sentence for humanity. Eve couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread. The entity was still down there, buried beneath the Earth's surface, hidden by ancient technologies. But for how much longer could it stay asleep? She had no answers. All she knew was that the clock was ticking, and Earth's darkest secret was about to be revealed. The battle for Earth. The deeper the team descended, the more the world around them seemed to shift. Eve's thoughts were consumed by the idea that they had unleashed something far beyond human comprehension. The warnings had been clear, but in their pursuit of knowledge, they had ignored them. Now, it was too late to turn back. The journey to Earth's hidden location had been a tense one. Armed with the coordinates extracted from the alien ship, Eve and her team arrived at a desolate, uninhabited region of the planet, far from any major city. A vast underground cavern system, lost to history, stretched beneath the Earth's crust, an ancient place buried beneath layers of rock, untouched for millennia. The prime entity, whatever it was, lay in the heart of this labyrinth. "We're close," Eve muttered as she scanned the terrain, her voice tense. The air was thick, heavy with an oppressive atmosphere. Even the technology they brought felt sluggish, as if the environment itself fought back against their presence. "We have to find the core. It's underground, but I can't pinpoint its exact location." "We're not the only ones looking," Captain Harrington said, his voice tense as he surveyed their surroundings. "There's something happening above us." Above them, the sky was thick with strange, swirling clouds, though it wasn't the weather that concerned them. Reports from the surface had been coming in. Odd electromagnetic pulses had begun disrupting satellites, communications, and power grids all over Earth. The awakening of the prime entity was no longer just a theory. It was happening, and the ripple effects were far-reaching. As they moved deeper into the caverns, the oppressive feeling grew stronger. It wasn't just the air, it was the entire environment. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, covered in strange symbols, remnants of an ancient language that no one had ever fully decoded. The further they went, the more alien the surroundings became. Then, it happened. The ground trembled beneath their feet. At first, it was barely noticeable, a slight shift in the earth. But then it grew, the tremors becoming more violent. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a strange, electric energy, like the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. "Everyone, get to cover!" Eve shouted. The team scrambled for safety as the cavern began to collapse around them. Massive chunks of rock fell from the ceiling, and the entire tunnel system seemed to shake violently, as though it were trying to expel them. "What the hell is happening?" one of the researchers yelled, his voice rising in panic. "The entity is waking," Eve replied grimly, her eyes scanning the surrounding area. "It's reacting to our presence. It knows we're here." The ground gave way beneath them as the walls started to warp, the cavern's natural formation shifting as if something was reaching upward from the depths. An unnatural, low growl echoed through the earth, vibrating in their bones. The entity was stirring. With the tremors intensifying, Eve knew they had little time left. The entity wasn't just an ancient force. It was something that could manipulate space, time, and reality itself. The alien messages had warned of its power, but no one had fully understood the extent of that power until now. And now, humanity was directly in its path. Get to the core, Eve commanded. We have to shut it down. Now. But the path to the core was treacherous. The one-straight tunnels were now twisting, warping into impossible shapes. The ground beneath them seemed to rise and fall at will, like the very earth was trying to keep them from reaching the entity's resting place. The team fought their way through the labyrinth, struggling to keep their bearings as reality itself bent and twisted around them. Time seemed to bend as well. Minutes felt like hours, and in one horrifying moment, they found themselves facing the same stretch of hallway they had passed only moments earlier. This is impossible, one of the engineers gasped. The physics, everything's wrong. Eve gritted her teeth. It's not just wrong. It's manipulating us. The entity's power is leaking into our reality. We need to move, now. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the cavern. The walls of the chamber were lined with intricate designs, similar to the alien symbols they had seen earlier. But at the center of the room, resting on a pedestal, was the core. It pulsed with an eerie, soft glow, a single point of light in the otherwise dark and distorted chamber. It was a crystalline structure, its surface covered in strange etchings that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Eve could feel the power radiating from it, a raw, uncontrollable force that seemed to reach out and touch her very soul. This is it, she whispered, her heart racing. This is the prime entity's prison. But as they approached, the chamber shook once more. The entity's power flared, and the walls around them seemed to crack open, revealing the creature at the heart of the disturbance. It wasn't a being in the traditional sense. It was something far more alien, a swirling mass of energy and matter, an abstract force of cosmic power that had transcended the boundaries of space and time. Its form shifted, impossible to comprehend, as it reached out with tendrils of raw energy, snaking toward the team. We need to seal it away, Eve shouted. Now! In a flash of instinct, the team worked together, using the alien technology they had discovered to activate the sealing mechanism embedded in the core. The process was complicated, requiring precise synchronization, but they were out of time. The entity's tendrils lashed out, striking the walls, and the air crackled with power. Reality itself began to fracture as the entity pushed against the barrier they were trying to create. Hold on! Eve screamed as the core hummed louder, its glow brightening until it nearly blinded them. A final surge of energy erupted from the pedestal, and with a deafening roar, the entity was pulled back into its prison. For a moment, everything was still. The trembling ceased, the air cleared, and the walls of the cavern stopped shifting. The entity was contained, for now. But Eve knew this was only a temporary victory. The entity was not truly gone, it was merely dormant again. They had bought humanity time, but they had awakened something dangerous. An Earth's dark secret was now known to the universe. As the dust settled, Eve turned to Captain Harrington. We can't let this happen again. He nodded grimly. We won't. But there's a bigger question now. What happens when it wakes next time? Eve didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity's fight for survival had only just begun. The aftermath. The silence that followed the entity's containment felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. The walls of the cavern stood still, no longer shifting and warping with the entity's power, but the air was thick with something else, an unsettling tension. The team stood in the aftermath of the crisis, their faces pale, eyes wide with the understanding that they had narrowly avoided an extinction-level event. Eve Carter stood motionless at the edge of the core, watching the glowing crystal as it hummed softly, its light pulsing in a steady rhythm. The sealing mechanism was active, But she knew better than anyone that this was only temporary. They had contained the entity, but it was not gone. It was merely dormant again, buried beneath layers of time and space, until the next disturbance, the next incursion, the next human curiosity that would awaken it again. "We need to secure this place," Captain Harrington said, breaking the tense silence. "Get the rest of the crew up here and begin the extraction." Eve nodded without looking away from the crystal. "Yes, but we need to make sure this site remains sealed. I don't think we fully understand what we've just dealt with." Harrington's gaze turned dark as he surveyed the cavern. "We've barely scratched the surface. Whatever this entity is, it's not just an alien artifact. It's a force, something beyond anything we've encountered. If it gets out again—" "I know," Eve interrupted, turning to meet his gaze. "I felt it, too. That thing. It's not bound by the same rules that govern the rest of us. It manipulates space, time, and reality like we would manipulate a chessboard. Next time, it might not be so easy to stop." The rest of the team began to move, cautiously at first, as if the cavern itself might spring back to life at any moment. The engineers began securing the area, setting up temporary barriers and shielding to protect the core and keep any external disturbances from triggering another awakening. For a brief moment, Eve allowed herself to close her eyes, her mind racing. She could still hear the sound of the entity's pulse, its power surging through the cavern like a beating heart. The fear, the sheer terror of what they had almost unleashed, still gripped her chest. But even more than fear, there was a sense of regret. She couldn't help but wonder if they had made a grave mistake, if the need to explore, to understand the unknown, had blinded them to the consequences of their actions. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden screech of a comlink. A voice crackled through her earpiece. "Dr. Carter, Captain Harrington, come in." Eve's fingers trembled as she activated the communicator. "This is Carter. What's the status?" "It's bad, Dr. Carter," the voice replied. It was Lieutenant Ramos, the head of security. "We're receiving distress signals from the surface. Several cities are experiencing massive power surges. Satellite communications are down, and we're getting reports of unusual seismic activity worldwide." Eve's stomach dropped. The ripple effects had begun. The entity's power had seeped into Earth systems, triggering disruptions far beyond their control. She knew that the entity's influence wasn't just local. It was far-reaching, touching everything from the atmosphere to the electromagnetic fields. Its presence was felt everywhere. "Get me a map of the global activity," Eve said, her mind already moving into crisis mode. "We need to understand the scale of this before it gets worse." The next few hours passed in a blur. Eve, Harrington, and the team worked furiously to stabilize the situation. They isolated the core, sealing it off from the rest of the cavern with energy barriers and physical locks. Every effort was made to ensure that nothing could disturb the core again. But it wasn't enough. The damage was already done. The strange, uncontrolled energy from the entity had begun to spread. Seismic tremors rocked the planet, and unexplained weather patterns swept through the globe. Cities experienced random electrical outages, and the magnetic field fluctuated unpredictably. In some places, reality itself seemed to bend. People reported strange, unexplainable events, objects levitating, time slowing, and visions of unearthly landscapes that couldn't possibly exist. "We're looking at a planetary-scale event," Eve said grimly as she stared at the data pouring in from every corner of the globe. "The entity isn't just manipulating this place. It's starting to tear at the fabric of reality itself. We can't control it from here," Captain Harrington said, pacing. "We need a global effort. We need every scientist, every government agency on this. And we need to figure out what it wants before it's too late." "I agree," Eve said, her voice filled with urgency. "But we don't have time for global coordination. The entity isn't going to wait for bureaucracy to catch up. It's already reacting to us. We need to make contact, understand its intent. And if we can't, we may need to take more drastic measures." "You mean destroy it?" Harrington asked, his tone skeptical. "How do you destroy something like that?" "I don't know," Eve admitted. "But it's already trying to rewrite the world as we know it. If we can't control it, we'll have to find a way to contain it permanently. The team worked well into the night, formulating plans to track the entity's power surges and deploy countermeasures. But the more they tried to stabilize the situation, the more they realized that the entity's influence was far more invasive than they had initially thought. It wasn't just a dormant force. It was a part of Earth itself, a parasite embedded deep within the planet, waiting for the right moment to reawaken. As Eve prepared to leave the cavern for a final report to Earth's highest authorities, she caught a fleeting glimpse of the core's glow, its light pulsating gently in the darkness. Her heart tightened, and a thought whispered through her mind. This was only the beginning. The entity had been dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Humanity had broken the seal, and now it was only a matter of time before it fully awakened. And when that happened, there would be no turning back. Even her team had bought Earth sometime, but they all knew the truth. There was no hiding from what lay beneath. The entity would return, and next time, it wouldn't be so easy to stop.